Good evening and welcome to Studio Incaminati, where we are in the midst of celebrating our 20th year of existence. And before we get started with tonight's event, I want to invite each and every one of you to visit the space and see our exhibition of Patrick Connors, where we celebrate the life and accomplishments of a great friend here in the studios, in the corridor exhibition. The cornerstone for Studio Incaminati was laid 20 years ago, as I said, but its conceptual seed was planted 420 years ago. The Carracci, a Bolognese family of Baroque artists, wanted to merge Florentine draftsmanship with the palette of the Venetians. They called their audacious school the Accademia degli Incaminati. When Leona and Nelson Shanks launched this program, it was modeled on an unprecedented construction of innovative learning. Studio Incaminati has continued developing programming in the spirit of innovative studies. In 2019, relying upon the volunteerism of faculty and staff, we embarked on a pilot program of sustained anatomical learning through close observation of drawing at the Sidney Kimmel Medical College in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We directed our course towards medical students, students of drawing and sculpture, as well as instructors from both institutions. In the midst of this, we also created in 2018 the lecture series which you are seeing tonight called The Higher Aim of Art. We wanted our students to immerse themselves in this intense curriculum about how to be confronted with why. Organized as a series of talks on the why factor of skill acquisition, as in why do you create? It has also been thought of as a where will you take your skills discussion, or what is vital to make images of in the 21st century. And it should thread into explorations on forging a governing creative vision for the individual artist. Our continued intention is to film these lectures for a digital library, which we would like to offer and to be utilized by our students at no additional charge. In 2019, we revised the title of our lecture series to the Bennett-Schmidt Lectures on the Higher Aim of Art in honor of our gracious underwriters, without whose help this lecture series would not exist. My first gesture is, as always, therefore, to thank Stephen Allen Bennett and Dr. Elaine Malati-Schmidt for their generosity underwriting this program. I'm very pleased to present artist Luis Álvarez Roure to Studio Incaminati, and I would like to interview him, but first I want to read you his bio. Luis is an award-winning artist for his portraits, still life paintings, and figure paintings. Among his most recognized works are portraits of iconic composer Philip Glass, former chairman of the Federal Reserve Paul Volcker, acclaimed American actress and playwright Anna DeVere Smith, Grammy award-winning violinist Joshua Bell, Metropolitan Opera bass and Kennedy Center's honoree Justino Diaz, British cellist Stephen Isserlis, and the legendary Cuban pioneer of Afro-Cuban jazz, Cándido Camero, to name a few. Luis was the recipient of the Draper Grand Prize and the People's Choice Award for the 24th Portrait Society of America's International Portrait Competition, celebrated in Atlanta, Georgia, last year. Yep. In April of 2022, in 2019, he was selected a finalist in the Outweighed Bookkeeper Portrait Competition at the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. The same year, his portrait of Philip Glass was exhibited at the National Portrait Gallery as part of the new works acquired by the museum for their permanent collection. Luis's work is as well in the collections of the Meme Museum in Barcelona, Spain, the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C., the Players Club of New York, and Steinway Hall in New York City. In 2020, Luis received the title of Living Master by the Art Renewal Center organization. Luis, you're clearly an extraordinary artist with a proven track record of success, which is undeniable. And one of our great efforts in this lecture series is to have people like yourself, outstanding in their pursuits, exposed to this community so we can ask you questions and interview you. I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for bringing some of your own artwork, which we have on the tables over there, which you can see.
A couple here.
Not everybody does that, so please partake in seeing Luis's work. And I want to begin by asking you in our interview style about your origins. So you're from Puerto Rico, right?
I am from Puerto Rico, but first of all, thank you for having me here, and for that great, so kind introduction of you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, yes. Would you mind talking about your upbringing? How was art practiced and supported within your own family?
I was born in Puerto Rico. My father and my mother were as photographers, So there was some sort of art making in my house already. And, but my father had he really had a great appreciation for art, visual arts and music. And as a child, he loved to draw and to paint. And so he never became professional at it, but he was good. And so when I was about 4 years old, probably, because my big sister came from school with her drawings. And so I got so inspired by seeing this, and I want just to copy her. And so this is the first time I think I have a memory of something, you know, that had to do with art and that I wanted to copy it. And
from your sister.
From my sister, yeah. And but with time I started like going a little bit on different direction. My interest was always faces. And this is something that had nothing to do with her art that she brought from school. It was something mine. And it was kind of obvious that I had some sort of a natural inclination to it. And so my father also had a partnership. There was a painter in another town of the island that it was a Spanish painter who did work, all sorts of works. Like my father was a photographer. He got commissions that people wanted. I don't know if you know about these old black and white photographs that these people sort of restored them and then they painted over, right? Or original copies, like in pastels or graphite or charcoal. And so I visited this studio with my father. And this is the time I'm 5, 6 years old. And I remember vividly, one time specifically, the painter had, you know, the easel with a big drawing of us. It was copying from a small photograph, small black and white photograph. And it was so impressive. To me, if I try to remember the size of this, I mean, it was huge. I don't know. I was a small kid, but I know it was big. It was a big drawing. And it really was a big impact. Like I think I thought that I wanted to be a painter, and I said it. I said, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And from the very beginning, I said that. They were always very supportive, my father and my mother.
So your father took you to see that work?
My father took me on the trip. I just wanted the company. It was a small kid, and so it was fun. Yeah.
Was your dad artistic?
Yes, okay. yes. He was not making art anymore, but he would help me. Like he would critique my work severely sometimes, but in a good way. It's like, that ear is too big, or the cheek went, you know, way to the side. So and I guess I took them the right way.
How about your mom?
My mom was the most supportive person. She has I don't know how much artistic talent she has, but she was there for me. If I needed materials, she would drive me to the art store, you know, and buy anything that I needed.
But not as much as the older sister, the most important.
Oh, that was very important.
Okay.
But very important, yes. Role model.
You know about that, right? So as I go to another question, I'd like to invite the audience who's attending virtually to chat questions as we go, and hopefully we can get a few of those channeled to us from the great and powerful Jared Fisher. So you said you have a story, I heard, of a broken elbow at school when you were younger.
I did, and this is, I'm very young. I'm 6 years old. I'm playing in my school, and a playground was concrete, and I fell. Then all of the kids just jumped on me, and then I had a really severe fracture on my right elbow, and it was very, it was a bad injury. I had surgery the next day, and the surgeon told my parents that, you know, he was very hopeful and he was very positive about the outcome of this injury, but he was very clear that even though he was very positive and optimistic about, you know, that I should heal properly, this is a kind of a luck situation, because if it happens again, then that could be devastating. That it could even stop the growing of my arm.
Wow.
Yeah. So with therapy, eventually I got better. But then I remember the first thing my father brought to the hospital was a big set of color pencils, a drawing pad, and this definitely was very important because I just it was heaven, you know. All through my recovery, I sketch, I draw, I colored, so I was not alone.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, my grandmother, who lived with us, I grew up with my father, my mother, and my grandmother. My grandmother was very disciplined and very kind of a tough, you know, presence, very loving, but very. Anything she said, we all, including my parents, we were like, okay, you know, that's it. And so she was very clear that she was very fearful that I could have another injury like this, and then that's it. So she decided that I cannot go out to, you know, to do normal activities that kids will do, like, you know, run and
severe
ride
isolation.
Severe isolation, which I took it in a very good way because, again, then I spent basically my whole entire childhood drawing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I saw you gesture to your right. Was it a right upper limb injury that you sustained?
It was here. It was the elbow, and the condyle bone was broken. So yeah, it was a serious situation.
Does that make you a lefty then?
No. But I
right.
did practice a lot, but you know, to write and to draw with my left hand. Actually, I didn't skip my school year. I was on top of my assignments.
So you're drawing with the arm that's healing. Wow.
I did. Yeah. I mean, I had a cast here, but I could grab the pencil, and then I could do this. It was hard, but yeah.
There's
maybe
some symbolism in that too, you know.
Yeah.
So, yes.
You're right.
Ideas for a painting.
Yes.
So I'm told you devoted yourself to learning music. Is that true?
That is true. Again, my sister had important part in this. My sister asked for a electric piano as a Christmas gift, and then she got it. And then there you go. And I'm going again, you know, to explore what is this about. My father was very musical too. He was also trying to decipher, you know, melodies and stuff. And then I got really, really into it. Because I think with art, they tried very hard, you know, that I joined the local art school. I think the only one art school in my town. And I always felt like completely, I didn't want to do it. I think I was afraid that making art was something that I enjoyed so much. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to be told, you know, like, you have to do this, you have to do that. So probably trying to understand why I always rejected the idea, but I never did. But with music, my father was very clear that because I was advancing, I was learning tunes by ear, and he said, no, this time you're going to go and you're going to learn music. You need to learn how to read music. This is very important. And even though I try my best to avoid it, he enrolled me in music school. I had a very good piano teacher. And
your instrument was the piano?
The piano.
Right.
And so it became something of very important and very disciplined, and I had a curriculum. Also, I had, this is the first time I am an extracurricular activity that is not my school, right? Then I was allowed to go out to make music and to learn an instrument. And so this, I think, and I'm sure, was very important at the point that I kind of stopped making my drawings, you know, eventually. I just got into this practicing mode, and it was very rudimentary. And so my teacher told me that maybe I should consider music as a career.
But you did go to college on it, right?
I did.
Okay.
So when I finished my high school, I went and auditioned at the conservatory, and my girlfriend did too. We met at the music school, and she's my wife now, so it's been a long time together.
In which music school?
in the local town music school.
Okay.
And then we applied to the conservatory music school, which is you get your degree, your undergrad in music performance. And we both got accepted, and then we did, very happy 4 years of bachelor's degree in music. It was great. It was an amazing time. Yeah.
Fascinating. So at some point, you've got to tell the audience now about your transition to New York City and your introduction to a certain painter called Nelson Shanks.
Yeah.
Was this at the Art Students League?
This was at the Art Students League.
All right.
We both finished our undergrad, my wife and me. We married, and then we applied to a school in New York City. We were accepted into the master's degree program. We came, we moved, and then there was something that started happening to me, and it was that I really started some sort of a real need of making art, drawing again. And again, I never had any sort of instruction, but I became quite proficient at drawing. And so I am studying my master's degree, so this is a lot of practice hours and a lot of classes in college. And I didn't know exactly how to find a place. And then I went to the Met Museum, and I'm standing in front of this big painting. I think it was a Water Lilies by Monet. And
it was Monet painting.
It was a Monet painting, and I definitely felt almost guilty. Like I felt something very, very strong inside of me. It was like, okay, I should be doing this somehow, and I think I know how to do this, even though I don't know how to do it. If that makes sense, it's like I kind of understood what is this about, but I don't know what to use. I don't know what the materials are. I don't know what technique, anything. And so it was something of a love-hate relationship with art. So I knew I needed instructions. And my wife is just doing her research, and she found the Art Students League. So I visited the Art Students League one night, and I look at the catalog and start shopping for a class, right? And then I am just looking, and everything looks fine, but let me see, and all of a sudden I see this incredible image, and I stop, and I knew this was the person I wanted to study with, and it was Nelson Shanks. I just couldn't believe somebody could paint something at this level. It was just, it blew my mind. And so, okay, this is it. I don't have to look anymore. I'm going to register. I register, and this is the time, to
So you go
commit.
to the league. You go to the league, but
Yes.
you're still studying music in graduate
yes.
school.
Oh, yes.
So how did that feel, being at this moment where you're about to emerge a professional with a master's degree in music, but you're shifting your focus, right?
Sort of. I don't think I was thinking really about switching professions. I was really and pretty much engaged with my music, and I knew I wanted to continue my piano studies, and I wanted to graduate, which I did. And I just wanted to learn how to paint. And the good thing is that the Art Students League is very flexible. You register, it's not really expensive, and I think that Nelson class we had 2 or 3 sessions per week.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
5 evening class, right? 2 instructors.
At least he was supposed to come 2 nights a week, which he almost ever didn't. But he did quite enough. He did quite enough. He was just so busy.
We would say the presence was felt.
Yes.
So what was it like when you first saw Nelson paint, when you saw him demonstrate?
Before that, I wanted to talk a little bit about my meeting with Nelson Shanks. When I met him, and I wanted so badly that that he see my work. And again, only things I had done were drawings, pencil drawings. And Jared, do you have the image of Rubinstein?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the, what is that? I'm sorry? Yeah, please. Yes,
Yeah, please,
yes.
Jared. Thank you so much.
This is a drawing I had made without any formal instruction. This is me trying to understand.
Very detailed drawing.
Very detailed.
Full value range.
Oh, thank you. And it was from a black and white photograph, and it was from my idol, one of my idols, my pianist, Arthur Rubinstein. And so I insisted that I wanted to show the drawing to Nelson. And at this time, Ismail was the monitor of the class and the assistant to Nelson.
Ismail and Scott, right?
Ismail
Scott. Yeah, Ismail Cheka, who was
Cheka,
awesome.
yes,
And
yes.
Ismail shared responsibilities with Scott. I
Yeah.
found,
Oh, and Scott. Yes, you're right. Yes. That's it. And then he introduced me to Nelson, and Nelson said, "Okay, so you want me to see the drawing?" Yes. He took the drawing and he put it on a like a tabouret or something. It was put it high, and he walked back, and he looked at it carefully, and he knew who the person was. He told me that's Rubinstein. And I was so proud. I was like, oh my goodness, he already recognized, so far so good. And yes. And so he kept looking at it. He said, this is very good. I mean, this is excellent. And to me, that was, complete success. And he kept looking at it, and then he looked at me and he said, I'm not sure this is what you want to do. And he turned his back at me and he continued teaching. And so from going from this is excellent to I'm not sure this is what you want to do, I got completely confused and not sure exactly what did he mean by that, right? Which thinking about, I'm pretty sure he meant that he knew I was very limited at the moment. He probably saw some potential, but he knew I needed to expand my possibilities and to be able to choose eventually.
There was so much about him that was performative in an inspirational way. So it was part of phrase, it would be articulated a certain way, and then there was a gesture, the turnaround,
Yes.
the back is facing you.
Yes.
That's all the time you got.
Yeah, he all of a sudden our meeting ended, and it seemed like, okay, now I told you something, and I know he probably wanted me to interpret that and to take it and to do something about it, but it was up to me, completely up to me. He didn't ask anything. He didn't ask me actually if I was part of his class. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't invite me to be part of his class. Yeah, it was incredible.
It's amazing. I'm just thinking as you speak, because there were so many examples of that, of the way that Nelson was able to communicate to people in just memorable ways. We had a very nice gentleman tour the school a few months ago who was a painter who was in the classes with us. And I never saw this happen, but he told a story about how he was standing at the easel, painting the model with his hand in one of his pockets, hands in his pocket. And Nelson walked past him and he pulls his hand out of his pocket. And didn't say a word, but it was like, don't be a pedestrian, strive, raise your game, be something better. And stuff like that would happen in that room, and it was magic, right?
It was magic. Yeah.
So speaking of magic, can you talk about the demonstration for the first time?
Demonstration, yes. Of course, I am at the league. I'm studying. I'm of the drawing class. I wanted desperately to be passed to the painting class, and so there was this coming up event. And everybody was electrified. It was like, oh, Nelson's going to demo, and it was in Caminati. At the other building, and so I told my wife we need to go, and she's like, of course, she already knew what Nelson meant, and so we drove.
You came down to the Wolf building.
Yes, the Wolf building, and then I remember the pose. I remember everything. I remember the electricity in the air. I remember how was he walking around, and I think somebody asked him if he wanted music to be played. Opera or something. Everything was like, okay, this is, but I am not I haven't seen him paint, and I haven't seen anybody at his level paint. So I'm still carrying, this fantasy of how you draw, how you paint, very, meticulously with this type of thing, and which he hated. And
That's true.
yes, and so he's ready. He has his canvas, he has his model, the light, everything, and all of a sudden he started just, tracing these big lines in the canvas. And it was so powerful, and it was so incredible, because in 5 minutes, I already saw this image just emerge from the canvas, and I understood what was going on. Before that, it was just flowing lines, and I burst into tears. It was just too strong, the impact, it was like, oh my God, now I get it. Now I see what he's doing, and now I see what at least I'm starting to have an idea what is this about. And it was very different from what I thought it was.
I remember one time I asked him, if someone's copying your paintings, which ones do you suggest they copy? And he said, my demos.
Yeah.
So there was something about
good.
the demonstrations that felt like it was a painting being made, but it was also communication with an audience, connecting visually with an audience to make lessons that flowed almost effortlessly into each other. But it was like a visual lecture in some respects.
Well, we were telling Jared that Nelson's 3-hour demonstration was a 3-year course, of lessons of painting. It was just immense. And you're saying that, but it's interesting because I have a file in my cloud of all, as many Nelson's demos as I can collect. And I am a collector of Nelson's demos. And I think there's not just that, but it's also a way of seeing how his process. And you can definitely see his process. It's all there. It's really exposed.
It's there, but it's also there in a way that was emblematic of what the school was striving to create, which is this person who was just completely consumed with his love of Baroque painting. And he had this formidable color training, in a 19th century straight-up Impressionist way. And then, of course, his obsession with drawing. And those things came together in ways that really inspired an understanding in the person, not necessarily for kind of personal admiration, but to embrace the ideas of the past because they were that powerful, they were that enabling, right?
Absolutely. I can agree more, yes.
Great. So we're in Nelson, and you're still studying music, and you're at the League.
Music. I am at the League. I am still studying music, and I consider myself a very lucky person because I found the equivalent of Nelson Shanks but in music.
In music, yes.
My piano teacher was a genius. He was absolutely somebody who look up to, and it's interesting because they have similar ideas. And I found so many parallelisms between the two arts. And I never connected this before. Of course, I was never an art student, but nevertheless, I had a relationship with art. And I don't think I never made a connection. But studying with Nelson, listening to him, having the opportunity of seeing him paint, and then having this other genius teaching me a piece of music that needs to be at a very high level of performance. See, then I started seeing these two arts, how they connect, because you cannot pretend that you are going to be doing something at a very high level, just because. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of understanding, there's a lot of studying, there's a lot of tradition that needs to be passed, and there are fundamentals.
What's the name of your music teacher you're referring to?
Herman Diaz. Herman Diaz. That's the way of saying it in Spanish. He was a Cuban professor, and he came to the States in 1945 on a grant by the great Chilean master Cándido Camero, who was one of the great pianists of the 20th century. So my piano teacher had a great lineage. If you can trace his lineage back to Beethoven, and I'm not kidding. This is true.
So can you describe some of the parallels between the two art forms?
There's a lot of, first of all, we have to understand something about music. A score is, and this is something that my teacher also told me, the music score is only a map. There's no way you can, composers don't, and they cannot put everything they think about in a piece of paper. And so there are fundamentals and there's a lot of structure. When I was working on some pieces, piano pieces, sometimes my teacher would work with me for 1 hour in 2 measures. And the reason for that is because there was a lot of information that you have to understand and to try to interpret, to reproduce, right?
For someone new to this, how long is 2 measures?
2 measures is 20 seconds of music.
20 seconds.
Or maybe less. It's just, I mean, a piece can have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of measures, you know that. And so 2 measures, he would be there with you, talking about line, talking about balance, talking about colors, because he used the word colors for many aspects of the harmonies that you are accompanying your melody.
Okay.
And so this is the time I'm starting to think, wait a second, I mean, this is not that different. And then recently maybe I started thinking that maybe music is not so abstract. It's very architectural, and there's a lot of form in it. So it's not something that I don't think anybody can do a good job, a fine job, only intuitively. You really need to know what you're doing, right? And but the other parallels that I found incredible were the physical aspect of how to produce sound or how to produce a painting. Nelson used to talk a lot about the use of the arm, the use of your whole entire body, and to step back, right? But I remember vividly when he said about, you know, I don't want to say it exactly, but he said something about using the wrist like this and to do this, and he hated that concept. And it is exactly what my piano teacher would tell me about playing a piano piece, because if you disconnect your arm to your hand, right, just by doing this, then it's a big limitation. So let's say the better way to produce better colors and better sounds when you are playing is by the use of the arm. It's by using the arm. And my piano teacher used to say about, it starts here. You have to do it from here. And then at the same time, I'm seeing Nelson talking about the use of the arm and the big shapes and the big angles. And I'm like, wait, there must be a connection. There must be some sort of nature to it. Almost there.
In the drawing and painting sense, the capacity one has to put their shoulder and their feeling into it simultaneously is often, it seems, thought of and pondered and contemplated by artists. Is that kind of the corollary to music, where you put your body into it and you're getting a sense of the color?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, things that my teacher used to do was actually, we were playing and he was holding the arm, or yes, touch, putting his hand on the shoulder. So he wanted to make sure you were using your weight. And he used to talk about we are looking for the, I have to translate it because our classes were in Spanish. It's Cuban, I'm from Puerto Rico. So the most efficient, the highest efficiency. So it's not necessarily that you cannot do it in a different way, but it may be better if you do it the way your body responds naturally, instead of trying to do something. He used example a lot of babies. So like if you see a toddler, when they walk to the piano, they bang the keys like this. They use the arm. They don't do this. And then these things get distorted with time. Like piano teachers start talking about, no, you use the finger, like finger muscles. Like what is that? You don't have muscles in your fingers. You have ligaments. And so on the contrary, you're gonna get hurt if you keep trying to produce big sound this way. But isn't that similar to producing a painting?
It's great.
It's so similar.
It is, yeah, it really is. And it gets someone who is trying to figure things out into a different state of mind, doesn't it? For how they're going to forge their own voice, as a painter, right?
I'm not sure Nelson analyzed a lot of how to do what the process was, right? I'm not wrong about it. He came up with his own conclusions. He knew, he not invented, but he realized, hey, this is the best way to do it, or this is a very efficient way to do it. And that's exactly what my piano teacher did. A lot of injured students went to him to get recovered, and he did. He was able to get them back to play.
Yes, indeed.
Even when they were with severe tendonitis.
Interesting.
He thought about the process. He thought a lot about the mechanics of it.
Yeah, so you had this point you wanted to make about time versus progress, and how time can be on your side or against you.
Yes, and it's because I can speak for myself, and I had this idea that I'm gonna get better because with time I'm gonna get better. And in one of my piano lessons, my teacher told me, that's not totally true. Time is gonna pass no matter what. You don't necessarily get better. You have to work very hard, and you have to do it the right way. Because what I mean by this is, we develop habits, and sometimes not the best ones. And so I always think about, what if I get a habit of doing something that is not great, and then I do it for 10 years? I don't think I'm gonna get better, I'm gonna get worse. I mean, I'm gonna become really good at not doing it good, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? So time is a tricky thing, because if you take it for granted, if you think that time is gonna pass and then gonna get better, be careful.
So we have this concept.
Yes.
I don't quite know the right phrase in it, but I'm thinking applied practice. So a painter who goes to read a passage from a certain book, from a certain classic text or treatise, who then goes back to the canvas and tries out that idea, or looks at it from a different perspective, maybe even from a different century, so that it's not the same thing. It may be a version, like a similar thing, but it uses a different part of maybe your thinking, your expectation, or your strategic way of working, right?
Right, so right, yes. More than one time, as I decided that I wanted to switch eventually from a musician, from a full-time musician to a full-time painter, I had to redo myself over and over. I have to start over again. And in part because I don't want to be so comfortable and let time pass by. It could be dangerous. So I have done it many times. And well, I go to the museum and look at great art again. I look at Nelson's works again. I look at everything that is great. And then I see again I need to work. There's a long distance yet, so there's a long way to get there, but it's fun.
So besides these two icons in your life who made such a difference in your development, had you seen any other music teachers or art teachers or drawing or painting teachers who had a similar effect in any way?
Yes, musicians, a lot of them. I don't know if I should mention them now, but many musicians, artists, people like you. I have bought your instructional videos. Robert Liberace's instructional videos. Michael Neal instructional videos. There are, I like to see different people who are great at something. I don't like to think there's just one way to do it, but there are many great ways to do things. And so I hope one day I'm going to develop a pretty good one. But I have to really fill my brain with good ideas, good ones.
I see. And then are you a teacher yourself?
Basically, yes. I'm not studying with it. After Nelson, I never took any instruction from anybody. It was my only teacher.
No, but I mean, you yourself, yes. Are you a teacher now as well?
No, not at the moment. Not at the moment. But looking forward to start something, yes.
Okay, here's a more in-depth one. I don't know why I write so much. A lot of artists...
I'm loving it, that's great.
A lot of artists in our audience are drawn to this lecture series because it focuses on emerging, on the great struggle to enter the larger creative community. What have your experiences been like on your making of, how should I say this, making your art aware to a more universal realm with its ideas, dealing with the art marketplace? How have you become more acquainted with this other world through competitions? What are your recommendations to emerging artists to get more acquainted with the world at large, the creative community at large?
Well, I think competitions are a good way to assess your strengths and your limitations or your weaknesses, because you're exposing yourself to, you're sending something to with the expectation that you're going to be picked, and a lot of the time it doesn't happen. But in my case, remember, I'm not coming from an visual arts scenario. I hang out with musicians. I don't know anybody in the visual arts world until recently. My friends are all musicians, and now I'm very grateful and happy that I have a good community of artists that I've started to know better, and they're starting to know me better. But it was through competitions, and in my case, I did it because of that, because I had nothing. I never went to art school. When I went to the league, I was a music student. So I just go there, I listen to Nelson or look at him. If Nelson is there and he's painting, I'm not doing anything. I'm just looking at him, I'm just listening at him and just paying attention, because it's just whatever, 3 hours of the league classes usually be, and then maybe he's not going to be here in a month because he was very busy. So I knew it was a time to pay attention, not to try it. So again, I'm saying this because I went to the league and then I went out. I never make real connections there. And so there was a point where I felt like, well, I am here, I'm trying to switch, to the art world, but I don't know anything or anybody. And so maybe if I compete, I will get somewhere. And oh goodness, I have tried many competitions many times throughout the years, and I have received so much more rejections than acceptances that you can't even believe it. The one thing I never did is quit trying, to apply to a competition. I mean, you should not get too personal about it. You send it.
It's true, and I would add that one of the things you wind up discovering is people respond to your work in ways you wouldn't expect. And this sounds cliche as can be, but you're in your own head, in your own studio so much that you have developed a sense of expectation for how your handwriting, your calligraphy, your color, your texture is going to be received.
Yes.
And it's often received very differently than you might expect. So competitions can be a really good way of disseminating that.
Absolutely. I love the concept, and I think it's important, and I think it helps. It really does.
Beautiful. Let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
Luis, please describe your first solo exhibition, which you mentioned was a big disappointment. Was it a teachable moment for you? And if it was, how did you learn about breaking with imitation?
My first solo exhibition, I don't know how successful it was, but in my mind it was not. So I felt, I got this big gallery from University of Connecticut, huge space that I had to fill with paintings, and I had really not much. So the exhibition is one year and a half in advance. They granted you the space, and so you go, you visit, and then you know, okay, I have a big space to fill. So I just started just painting like crazy, you know, big paintings, most of them, which it was something that I've never did before. I work on every format, every scale, like from, you know, small paintings to big ones, and different subjects. And when the exhibition was over, it took me a year or more to prepare this exhibition. I got quite grumpy during that year. I mean, I was so stressed out, and when the exhibition was over, I felt that somehow I didn't achieve something great, something good enough. And so I am in my studio. I get all the paintings back. I don't even know how many, but a lot of paintings, and all of them were big. And so I decided, so I can just continue doing this. And then I remember Nelson again, maybe this is not what you want to do. See, this came over and over. And even though I was doing something that I like to do, but maybe I wasn't doing it the way I wanted to do it. And so I decided I had another choice, which is just try something different. And then this time I thought, you know what, I'm going to try something so different that I don't care. I'm just going to start painting. And every painting I do, if it's not good enough, I'm just going to throw it away. I had no pressure and I had no expectations. I already had painted Philip Glass, and I had a file with 200 pictures of him. I had the big fortune of visiting him in New York City in his house. And so he posed for me for half hour, 45 minutes, because he was so busy. He told me, look, you can come, you can take pictures, but I can only give you half hour. So 45 minutes, I don't remember. It's not really different, right?
All right.
And so I decided, okay, well, let me take this opportunity, whatever it is, and try to do my best out of it. So I still have the file, of course, and I still have it. And then I look at the pictures again, and the big painting of Philip Glass, I think it was a good painting. It's not the way I paint in style, maybe now, but I consider that a good painting. But then, so I look through the pictures, and I pick a different one, and I pick a 16 by 16 panel, and I didn't tone it or anything. I just got a pencil and then just did some marks, very loose. You know, I use my arm, make sure it's my arm. But
Always.
with pencil, but with pencil this time, I felt like, you know, I never felt quite comfortable with starting with paint, because I'm not that good at it. I'm not that good at measuring, you know. And so with the pencil, just a vague idea of it, and so I started just painting right there after a couple of lines, and I spent probably 8 hours in this painting. It became sort of an alla prima thing, and I think it was a great painting. And this painting is now the National Portrait Gallery permanent collection.
This one we have on the screen, Jared? Beautiful.
That painting definitely changed the way I felt. It represents the beginning of something that started to be mine. And when I say that, I'm not dismissing what I learned. On the contrary, what I think is that I am using everything I learned even in music, and I'm trying to put it all together, but in a way that is something that I feel is mine.
So when you say break with imitation, you're referring to imitating another's maybe vision?
Yeah, for too long I was trying to paint at Nelson. Okay. And it was hard to break with that because, again, he is such a strong figure. He made, and he's still making this incredible impact in my life. And then who doesn't want to paint like Nelson, you know? But Nelson is Nelson. And you cannot think the way he thought. This is why he's great, because he allowed himself to be himself. And so when you try to be somebody like him, you are going to fail. I'm convinced.
Yeah, I'm asking because normally when I've heard a phrase like breaking with imitation, it refers to painting from photographs and breaking away from that tendency. But this is something more deep. It reminds me of a speaker we had who talked about appropriation, appropriating other imagery, appropriating other styles or other classic visual images that have been passed through our history. Well, so you're finding your own.
I think so, because this is what happens a lot of the time. I go to any museum and I see Rembrandt, and then I see Rembrandt's followers. They look a lot like Rembrandt, but they're not Rembrandt. And even I can enjoy these paintings, but I want to see. If I want to see Rembrandt, I want to see Rembrandt. And I mean, I don't want to be rude, or I don't want to say anything bad about it. But I don't want to be an imitator. I don't want to be I want to be a follower, but I want to be something. I hope I become somebody, well, more authentic. Let's say. Okay. This is a. I'm looking there, you know.
It's a fabulous point. I have to ask you: is this break with imitation what you refer to when you say the breakthrough moment is for you? What is the breakthrough moment?
Well, that Philip Glass painting, the small one, and then eventually the portrait, National Portrait acquired. Right. And that meant a lot, because for the National Portrait Gallery, acquire a painting is a long process, it's very rigorous. So in a way, to me, it was a confirmation that there was something good in that painting.
But is the breakthrough moment finding that you're not borrowing from another image, or is it that feeling that you had that there's something here that's mine, it's finally mine?
Yes. I needed to depart with trying to produce work that looked like this or that looked like that, or this person or the other. And again, Nelson was so close. I look at his paintings in person so many times, and they are just, they seduce you. I mean, you want to do that. But it was hard to break with that. Or with Sorolla, or with Sargent, or with anyone who you really admire, and then you feel, I want to do this, I want to paint like that. Well, I think it's great that you absorb that, but there's a moment that you really need to depart, and just like in life.
It seems like the way that you find the most unique painters are moments like that, right? Where they can break away from whatever has been filling their head for a long time and finally reach in and find their own voice. And,
absolutely.
And recognize that, and then, move on from there.
And not to be afraid.
Yeah,
not to be afraid, because it's fearful. It's like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. This doesn't look really like anything I've learned before, but if it's good, then you are doing something that...
You keep at it, you don't give up. Exactly.
That's it.
So is it true that you once explored abstraction, and what was your white period about?
This is something that I definitely started experimenting during the pandemic. I don't think I ever had a desire for try anything abstract, and I don't consider myself an abstract artist, but I have become to like abstraction, and it's something that I feel that I can definitely add to my database, and it's definitely not going to make me less of an artist. It's probably going to add something. And so during the pandemic time, we were locked down, and you cannot have a model to pose for you or anything like that. So I decided that I wanted to try paintings that I never really had an inclination for, were still lifes. And so I just went to the market, and then I brought lemons and mangoes and any type of fruit. And then I am in my studio, and then I'm trying to think, okay, let me just set a really nice still life. But again, I'm feeling like, what am I going to do here? Another one of those, who am I thinking now? All this Dutch, beautiful, but no, any traditional lifestyle, no, I didn't want to do that. So I decided just to put a piece of white cloth and to arrange the objects. And then I know I need to improvise. This is the first time in my life that I felt the necessity and the desire to improvise something in a painting, something that I'm not completely looking at. There are elements that I am looking at, and I am trying my best to paint the most realist way, but the rest is an improvisation. And most of the times, if the objects were the realist part in the painting, and the rest, the environment, is completely made up. And so I started experimenting with shadows. This is a cast shadow that runs this way, and then instead of trying to paint it the way I see it, well, maybe I try to make it a liquid form, things like that. And then I wanted to see the paint just drip on the canvas, and then I am completely improvising the background. It's a place that doesn't exist. And somehow this made me feel very, very comfortable and very happy. I'm very, it was like freeing myself. Maybe the situation, but I used a lot of white paint for the backgrounds. Most of my backgrounds were white. And that's why I call it like a white period, which I still kind of there yet. There's something about these improvisations that, to me, they were a way of feeling something that I don't know, I haven't met. I haven't been there, but it feels like I know this place. I don't know if that makes sense.
I reacted to, there was the painting of the lemons where the one was kind of off-center, which is very interesting, that composition. And I really enjoyed, in the sense that you were looking at design, you were looking at composing in a way that maybe led you again to a place of personal resonance with what you're doing. And I imagine from what you're telling me now that you then ditched the still lives entirely and went after the fabric in an abstract, experimental fashion.
Yeah. Yes, there was also lots of different textures. I wanted to see how I use paint in different ways, like, lots of impasto and lots of areas where the paint looks almost like a watercolor. I always paint with oils, but it's so diluted that it's almost like a watercolor effect.
Yeah, I've seen that in paintings. Yeah.
And so this conversation between the different textures, I feel is very vibrant, and it allows me to breathe.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So that led you through the pandemic.
Yes.
And brought you to the Portrait Society International Conference, The Art of the Portrait. So would you please take us through that extraordinary experience a bit in depth?
Oh, again, this is a result, this is the pinnacle of many years of trying to get into the Portrait Society of America, anything, finalists or whatever, any prize. For many years, nothing. I was never a finalist or anything. And of course, I look at the paintings I submitted years ago, and we're not good enough. But I was like, of course, But this painting that I submitted to this competition this year, is 2021, is inspired. The theme is inspired by an opera.
This is Masquerade, right?
Masquerade is directly inspired by an opera that I love. So again, we are using music again as a source. And I had this idea of painting the character, but again, placed in an environment that it can be sort of real. It can be, but not necessarily. It's hard to say, it's hard to tell. And all the background of this painting is white, so I really use a lot of different shades of white, and the painting, I guess, had some sort of strength in it. I sent the painting and I became a finalist. This is the first time I am a finalist of the Portrait Society of America, and this is the first time I actually go to the conference, because I was a finalist. So I was like, I have to be there. I'm attending the conference, and the experience is incredible because the first 3 days, you are meeting people. But the incredible part of this is that everybody was so friendly. Nobody there was rude to me or indifferent. And I met so many friends. So this is an amount of, it's a big, large group of people, 600, 700, in attendance. And a lot of them, or most of them are great artists. And so you are among them and you are discussing ideas and talking. And for the first time, I'm kind of, developing this network of friends in the art world. And it was an incredible experience. Now, then is the banquet with the announcement of the prizes. And there's everybody's, it's a big expectation. And I think what makes it really, really exciting is they do it in a countdown. Right? So you're there, and then they say number 20 or number 10 or on the finalists, right, and then if your name hasn't been mentioned, you are going to be among the winners.
The blood pressure goes up.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
That's amazing.
It's really exciting. It's a great moment, and it's definitely probably the greatest moment in up to this day. At achieving something in the arts. In these terms.
And the effects afterward have been tremendous as well, right?
Very, very good. Yeah, I have got work out of it. Invitations, I believe, maybe being here tonight, maybe as a part of that. But commissions and lots of articles. And your name is mentioned every time Portrait Society will mention about their competitions or something. Most probably your name is going to be there with your image.
And you're going back next year again, second year in a row.
Yes, I will. It's the 25th anniversary.
Oh yes.
It's gonna be a big one.
Yes.
And they raised the prize, the monetary prize too.
Oh, they did as well. Okay.
It's great. It's a great prize.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Well, that's amazing. I'm sure there are going to be some more questions from the audience. There are some coming in, no doubt. A few
comments, actually.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
There's some good ones, though.
Excellent. I want to ask you, this is a little bit more, again, because these are really important. These are invaluable opportunities for our students and our entire community, our greater kind of family, which you're a part of, from our similar backgrounds.
There's some DNA there.
There's some DNA there,
Absolutely.
without a doubt. Yeah, because you and I were both in those league classes.
Yes. Oh, yes.
But for them to connect with you and to hear your story and to see your success and to be inspired in their own way to chart their unique path for their creativity. So what would you describe as the higher aim in your work? What's your higher objective with what you want to do with your work going forward?
Well, first of all, I want to continue creating and continue experimenting. I want to be inspired every day. I want to find things that inspire me to create good pieces of art. Well, most important, I think, I wish my art is something more of not about me. So I can have my own idea. I definitely have my own ideas. I do have my own interpretation, my concepts very clear, but I do not pretend this is what people are going to get out of my art. And I almost don't want that to happen, because then it becomes something that I don't see how is this going to affect anyone. So I wish my art is something more personal, more individual, because we all have different backgrounds, we all have different views, we all have different ideas, we all have different voids and needs. And so if one of my paintings can fill that void in a personal way, then I think I did my work right. I don't pretend then to interpret my work and to say, this is what he means. No, that's not. And most of the time people ask me, what do you mean? And I ask them, what do you see? I'm more interested in what you see than what I can say about what I did, because I did it for myself. But you have the right to see it for yourself, and you should.
That fits, because that goes, one might say beyond the marketplace of the work. A lot of this is trying to survive, though.
Yeah.
And so how would you reconcile those two parallel interests with being successful in a kind of making ends meet sort of way, but also really focusing on making a difference in somebody's outlook?
Yes.
Which one is more important? We can tell, right?
I always think about music. A composer. The tricky part here is that you're the composer and the interpreter, right? But in music, I was never a composer. I was an interpreter. So, but what Debussy actually thought when he composed L'Île Joyeuse or one of his preludes, I don't know. But those pieces make me feel really happy. Those pieces, sometimes I can put those pieces completely in a situation that is personal. I mean, I feel those pieces like they feel the void, they feel the need right now. So is it really important for me to know what was his intention? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That really is. There's a mystery in it, and that goes to a kind of the personal equation, as Woodbury would say.
If we coincide, then that's great. But we don't have to, right?
Indeed. So this takes us to audience questions. Jared, do we have any?
More comments, but if you want to ask him here first, and then I'll take the mic and I'll read these off. There's some interesting stuff in here.
Awesome.
Audience questions?
Oh, I do.
Oh,
Who
by all
is
means.
your favorite
Hold on.
composer?
Go ahead.
Who is your favorite composer?
My favorite composer. My favorite composer is always the one I'm working at the moment. When I'm working a piece of Chopin, then Chopin is my favorite composer. When I'm doing a Debussy prelude, then Debussy is absolutely my favorite composer.
And do you listen to your favorite composer of the moment while you're painting?
Oh, that's a good question. And this has to do with the white period during the pandemic, because before then, every time I painted, I had music play until that time in my life. Then I had to stop playing music. And I don't know, it was like trying to improvise my ideas while listening to music didn't work. It really interferes. So I stopped listening to music most of the time. Now it's rarely I listen to music while I'm painting. And this is interesting because a couple of years ago, somebody interviewed me. And then it was like, yes, I listen to music 100% of the time I paint. So I don't think I'm really fixed at anything right now. It's whatever it works for me. But right now, no, I can't listen to music.
Hi, Luis.
Hi.
You derived so much inspiration from your family in Puerto Rico as a child. So have you done many paintings that are inspired by or, kind of to honor your family?
Many.
Many.
I have painted quite a few. Everybody who lived in my house, I have painted a portrait of them. Thank you. In different stages of their lives, like some paintings I have done in difficult times. My father suffered from dementia, and he ultimately passed away last year. And so the two portraits that you have, the one of my mother and my father, is in the very difficult times when we knew already about the illness, and he was already experiencing some difficulties. And I don't think he was quite sure what I was trying to do. He was looking at me, and his gaze was not completely there. It's a sad painting, but it's personal. Maybe you look at the painting and it's different for you, or maybe you can identify with something. But these are very personal. I have painted my grandmother, the one who I grew up, many times. My mother, during the time she was helping my father going through dementia, and it's very difficult for. It's incredible. It's incredible work, and so she was not, and she has complained. She's like, "Why do you paint me like that? I feel like I don't look great." I'm like, "Mom, this is much more than that. This is a time. This is a moment in time." And I felt like I wanted to record it. I wanted to be this eternal, if that's something, in painting, but at least to last for many, many years. Yeah.
You can't hear me on this, but
Yes.
that in that way, you're healing with your painting.
I've painted my kids.
But you're healing yourself.
Yes.
Because you're seeing your
Yes.
parents go through this, and you're healing yourself through the work.
Absolutely. And it probably goes back when I broke my arm. It was a healing moment, making art. I think art is really healing for the one who makes it and for the one who appreciates, and it's a cycle.
Indeed. Jared?
Annalisa?
I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes.
Luis, did you experience any emotional turmoil when you decided to pursue painting professionally as opposed to classical music?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, it was a long term. You can ask my wife. Very difficult. Very difficult. It was actually very hard. I have thought about this many times. Like when you think something's difficult, and you're like, "Oh, that's gonna be difficult," but it's a lot. It's way more difficult than you ever thought it was gonna be. Like for me, difficult now means something else. It can be extremely difficult, and maybe you don't even imagine that it could be that hard. So I won't say this is a life and death situation, but they were difficult times. Yeah, very difficult. But I'm happy I did it.
Oh, yes.
No regrets.
Your grandmother was a piano teacher, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Your grandmother was a piano teacher.
My father's mother was a classical pianist.
Nelson's mother.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. I never knew that. I knew you played the piano. I knew that, but yes.
Was adamant that I was my practice
That is
piano for
awesome.
an hour and a half every day.
Of course.
Remember that.
And you're.
Perform for his friends.
Oh yes, and now you're an artist, so you can relate. Yes.
Well, my story is a little different.
Okay. Well, that's the beauty of it. Everybody has a different one.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of variation.
Yes.
Jared, I won't take the floor.
What was that, Annalise?
Please continue.
Oh, okay. Time for the weird thing of hearing myself in my own headphones. I'm actually going to take them all off. Okay. It's really disorienting. So just a couple of things. First, Karina Furman, shout out to Karina. She's been at like every single one of these things for like 5 years. That's awesome, Karina.
Karina's the best.
Yeah. And she just thanked you for sharing all of the expertise in the heart tonight. So
Oh.
that was great. Laura, I said, very interesting point of view. But one of the interesting ones that came up here was Andrew Rodell and Andre Cruz both sort of said the same thing, which is one said they played piano and painted, one said they painted and wrote. And it said, I paint and write, and the dance is the same. All arts follow the same universal laws. That's why there are good works in different cultures and in different eras. And obviously, I'm a graduate of this school. I paint and draw, but I make my living with videography, and it is all the same. And I always think of that Henry Rankin Poor quote, where it's like photography and painting, because at that point it was like early 1900s, and you said, they walk on parallel paths, but hand in hand to the same place. So that was just an interesting thing that a lot of people brought up. And I liked this one a lot. It's about your painting that went to the Portrait Society.
Yes.
Andre wrote, very nice painting, theatrical, dramatic, and melancholic. Anyway, says long day for me. He said, that's the qualities that make art the higher aim. And I just thought that was a really cool
Beautiful. Thank you.
thing to say.
Oh, that's great.
So stay on for one more minute if anybody has any other questions. Anybody else in the room have, Ruth, you have a question? All right, let me hand this off.
Go ahead, Ruth. Yes.
Hi,
Hi,
nice to
Laura,
meet
Ruth.
you.
Hi.
We have a lot of parallels in our life, from injury to the study of music and the study of art. In fact, the art teacher in high school called me into her office to recommend that I go into art. She said, what are you going to study? And I said, music. And she said, well, then get out of my office. Because if you're good in more than one thing, it's going to drive you crazy through your life. Anyway, I chose music first, and I also felt the need to move into art. And I was wondering if you ever thought about the parallels between the periods of music and art in terms of how notes are actually notated, expressed. Tonalities, for example, came about pretty close to expressionism, let's say, and if you could expound on that.
Well, this is a personal opinion, and I have, of course, thought about that extensively, and I don't know if I have the right answer for it, but I find parallels between the two arts within the periods in time. So much that at some point I went to the Met and I was looking at a Monet painting, and I thought, what a beautiful painting by Debussy. This is what came to my mind. And again, talking about the
Makes a lot of sense.
it does, I think. But I have debated with friends, an artist friend who thinks it's not, and he has the right to think it's not. But remember when I said about there must be some sort of a physics law about the way you produce art, right? Like playing the piano using your physical movement affects the sound, and the physical movement of the stroke affects the expression of the work. And maybe something in a natural way through times was happening and affected the way people listened or saw or wanted to express their ideas. I definitely feel a connection. Maybe I'm biased, but I do feel it, yes. This, to me, it's pretty clear, actually. So, Daphne and Chloe. Exactly. And also because I think they follow some canons. I mean, the laws during the Baroque period in music and in painting were different from the Impressionism. And I love Debussy's quote. He says, "Art, rules don't make art. Art make rules." So I think there's something to it, and sometimes we have to probably listen carefully. Again, breaking with imitation, breaking with habits, and just try something and listen. Maybe you're into something, but you're not letting it happen. And maybe this is what these great people did. Who knows?
There's a quote, Harold Speed, where he says, each civilization gets the art it deserves. To a certain extent, you know, where the civilization places its values
Yeah.
and its focus and its, you know, its industry, its intelligence goes into the music
Exactly.
and into the art.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And all arts forms. I mean, dance, music, poetry, and visual arts. I think they're, in a way, they are the same.
So we have Andre Cruz here, who is going to ask a bit of a tough question, I think. He says, don't you think you should paint for humanity and not for you? The viewer gets catharsis. It's harder this way, though, right? And also, I think, more universal, because despite the personal experiences, we are all humans. Tolstoy said something like, if you know yourself, you know every human, and you can write any story.
Right,
Thought?
exactly right. That you need to know yourself, and probably that's why it's a good idea to try to do things the way you know better. But when I say I paint for myself, what I meant is that I have an idea and I have a concept that I want to develop, but I don't want to make that work of art fix into it. So yes, it's the opposite. What I try to say is that I wish, and my hope is this, I'm painting for humanity, but I cannot try to do it from their point of view, because then I'm not going to be honest. I mean, it's a difficult situation, but this is exactly, I agree with him, especially because of that. I think I made a painting and I'm doing it for you, but I cannot do it trying to understand your, you know, what's going on in your head. I have to do it from inside.
Yeah, I mean, Margaret, I don't know if you can hear me, Jared, but
You can come get the mic if you want, because
Yeah.
that should be it. Because I know you got to do end of the night thing, and I got to put these headphones back on.
thank you. I just
so
wanted
that was
to.
Andre, thank you, Andre, for your question.
I wanted to add to
It's a
that.
great question. Yeah.
I wanted to add to that Margaret had said during her talk that it was a Saul Bellow quote, the soul wants what the soul wants. So you had this irrepressible sense, desire, need to do what you were going to do in the visual arts, and that made you, that fulfilled you, and that in turn fulfilled society. And maybe in devoting yourself and just allowing yourself to pursue this thing that you cannot say no to,
You cannot say
because
no
if
to
you
it.
do, you're going to lose your mind wondering if
Sure.
you'd done it, if you'd gone in that direction. Maybe that's the way that you fulfill society and paint for humanity.
Absolutely. I line up very much with this.
That's my take on it. Any other questions from anybody?
great.
We're good? Right, well, I want to thank you all again so much for being here for this Bennett-Schmidt lecture on the higher aim of art. I want to thank Luis very much
I
as
wanna
well
thank you
for being
and
here.
you all for being here.
And I'd like to extend an invitation to everybody for our last in the fall 2022 lecture series, December the 7th, the day that will live in infamy. That will be our lecture here with Steve Mumford, who will discuss the higher aim of art. I hope you can join us for that evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I like it. That was great.